Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Hello and welcome into another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik, and this is episode number 206. That's right, already episode number 206 of the Baseball Podcast here on Thursday, July 16th. I appreciate everybody listening in today. Hopefully you're having another lovely work week out there, getting through it. We are getting ever so closer to baseball here, officially 1 week away from opening day. Now, I record the podcast on late Wednesday night, so I will have 2 more episodes until we actually discuss real baseball. The first episode will be dropping opening day. I'll give an in-depth preview of those night's games, those 2 games, maybe a prediction I saw on MajorLeagueBaseball.com or, the MLB app, whichever it is. There's a contest going where if you pick every single winner opening day, you win a lot of money. So for next week's episode at this time, next Thursday, I'll throw my picks in the hat, let you guys know who I'm thinking is going to win every game opening day, and maybe we'll get lucky and make some money here on the podcast, and it'll be documenting the entire thing for us. But, of course, that's most likely not going to be the case, since not a lot of people can predict 16 straight games. I mean, a parlay of 3 teams is absurd odds, so you throw in all games, and you're looking at some ridiculous odds, which is why MLB does it. But it's free to enter, so why not? Let's throw our hat in the ring. So we got a good episode lined up for you here today. A lot to talk about, plenty to get into. I think you guys are going to enjoy today's episode. But right off, the top here, we're going to talk about a subject we haven't discussed yet, and that is the umpires of Major League Baseball. It came out on Wednesday. There was a report by John Heyman, and then echoed amongst many others, that says 11 umpires will opt out of this 2020 season moving forward. Now, Joe West is not one of them. Joe West made headlines on his own a few days back, maybe a week or so ago now, basically talking about the coronavirus and how he is going to umpire even though he is high risk due to some health issues, and he potentially doesn't think the coronavirus is as bad as the media is putting out. And the umpires union released a statement that Joe's opinions do not reflect that of his employer, more or less, which was stated by the rest of the umpires there. So Joe West will be umpiring here in 2020. So all you Joe West fans out there, you get to see him out there again. And hey, if Joe's in your town, so if you're watching the ball game, if you're watching the hometown team, gosh, I can't say this now that it's 2020 and everything going on, but I was going to tell you, Joe loves to sing karaoke. I've been out in Philadelphia. I've had friends out in Philadelphia who have seen Joe out at the bar after the game getting a drink, and he crushes karaoke. So not the huge joints, kind of smaller hole in the wall, but if they got a microphone you can get on a weekend night, maybe when Joe's traveling, you could catch him singing karaoke. But with all the bars being closed, coronavirus, I caught myself there. I was going to say, hey, go out to the karaoke bars. Maybe you'll run into Joe West, but nope, that's not going to happen here. So just a tidbit of info for you there. Joe West, big karaoke guy when he gets out on the road, and he can actually sing. He's not bad. So Joe, if you get wind of this, if this blows up and it gets back to Joe, shout out to you, sir. You can really lay one down there on the weekend. So continue to do your thing. I respect it. I appreciate it. But the rest of the umpires, like I said, 11 of them going to opt out this year for 2020. And there are 76 full-time umpires. So that number will go down to 65, obviously, of the 76 opting in. But 20 of the 76 are over the age of 55. Now, we haven't received identity information, or, we don't know who the 11 umpires are that are opting out, essentially, but 20 of the 76 are over the age of 55, which qualifies you for quote-unquote high risk with coronavirus based on what they are seeing across the country and the severity of the virus relative to your age. So I would presume that almost, 8, 9, 10 of the 11, maybe above the age of 55, probably have an underlying health condition that they're concerned about. So this isn't, talking smack on the umpires in any way, more just kind of sharing the information that's come out. But the umpires who are at risk, who do sit out 2020, will be compensated, similar to that of the players. MLB and the umpires signed an agreement that said if you are high risk, you will get compensated. And if there is at least one regular season game, umpires will get 37.5% of their salaries, at least 37.5. It'll be more than that if they finish the 60 games, but, say they play 5, 10 games, something happens, they got to shut it down. Umpires are still going to get over a third of the salaries that they are owed this year. So not a bad deal for the umpires. Obviously, there's concern with social distancing. Tonight, for the first time, I actually watched live baseball. The Phillies on YouTube put out their inter-squad game that they had at Citizens Bank Park a bit earlier tonight, 6 innings. I was looking at the umpires, trying to look at some observations, and with the knowledge that I was going to discuss it later on the podcast. And one of the umpires behind home plate wore a face mask while calling balls and strikes. One of them did not. They rotated behind the dish to get work in as well, like the Phillies were, player positional wise, but the umpires were doing the same, and it's going to be a personal preference. Some of them are going to wear face masks in relative proximity to the catchers, all the batters, and the others and things like that. And, if you're the second base ump, maybe floating around center field, the face mask isn't as important for you as it is if you're calling balls and strikes that night. So the umpires as well this year, some fine details I was able to find out is it looks like that instead of doing entire series, which is the way it's been set up in the past, umpires will do series and then rotate from city to city. Now umpires will do entire homestands. So if you have a 7-game homestand, 6, 10, whatever it is understood now that umpires, for the most part, will try to do entire homestands. And then, even when they do have to travel, they will look to travel to the closest proximity from that current location. So, say you're in New York City and the Mets have a 10-game homestand, and then all of a sudden the next day the Yankees come home from being on the road. Well, it's a pretty safe bet that umpire crew from Queens is going to hop on the subway and go over to the Bronx for the next week for the homestand in New York. Very similar situations in Chicago, the 2 squads there, or LA between Anaheim and the Dodgers. If they're in Anaheim, they go across that way. So they're going to try to keep things as close as possible in the East. Philadelphia to Baltimore, D.C., New York. You're probably going to see some very likely faces, especially with a lot of inter-squad action going on or inter-division action going on at that point. Not inter-squad. They'll finally play somebody else. I'm just so used to watching teams play each other here, whether it's on Twitter, MLB Network, YouTube, you name it. Teams are putting out the content of the inter-squad games that I've consumed every bit of it. I mean, come on. I'm just starving for content. But so the umpires are going to do entire homestands, stay very, very close with local cities, definitely stay within the divisions. I don't see an East crew going West or Central. I think they're certainly going to say, hey, these are the Eastern umpires that we're going to have for the summer, and this is the way we're going to go moving forward. So it'll be fascinating to see the follow-up conversation to have, and some of the articles out there and discussion that's starting to happen is with the social distancing concerns and some umpires wearing masks, some not, calling balls and strikes. Is this the summer with 60 games, with the universal DH, with the runner on second and extra innings to implement the robotic strike zone, robotic umpires, balls and strikes going by the K zone? And how much time do we have here? 50 minutes for the rest of the episode? That's not enough time for me to talk about this particular topic. So no, I'm just kidding. This is going to be the rest of it for segment 1 here. But this is certainly a conversation that I want to have with a lot of you out there and a lot of different viewpoints, because I understand both sides. But the way I look at it, right? So I have both perspectives. I was at a Division I level, both a hitter and a pitcher. So I can communicate as a pitcher and as a hitter. And the way I look at it, again, just kind of getting things correct, right? That's what everybody wants to do. That's what replay's all about. 100% right, out, safe, review. Well, the umpires behind the dish are very good at an extremely difficult job. I mean, they get 97, 98, 99% of the calls right. The problem is, over the course of the game, say maybe you see 300 pitches, and if you're at a 97% success rate, well, that means you missed 9 pitches throughout that entire game. You missed 1 an inning. And when you break it down to 1 an inning, that's a lot. Like, you really just can't miss 1 an inning. And yet at the end of the day, you look up and you go, man, 97% correct today. That's a pretty good day at the office. Any office, except for this one, which is why it's become a conversation. Now, a lot of the old, old style of thinking, National League, non-DH, human error is part of the game. It's part of baseball. The umpires, you can't take it out of it. You can't get it 100% right. But the more and more the millennials push, Gen Z, we very much, technology, get it right, zoom in, replay, review, pause, slow-mo, all of the above. But the problem is with the strike zone, the way it's currently written and the way it's been called and implemented over the life of the history of baseball is not one and the same. And that's ultimately, I think, the root of the problem. So basically, let me give you an example. We'll go righty on righty or lefty on lefty, off-speed pitch, curveball, slider, breaking ball, right? So righty, it's a hard curveball away from the right-handed hitter. So by rule, if the ball crosses the front of the plate, the very front of the plate, closest to the pitcher, that is a strike. Not where it finishes, not where the catcher catches the ball, but when it crosses that front plane, is it above the zone? Is it in that little box? And just thinking about it like Mythbuster style, right? Like scientifically speaking here. But if it's a right-handed guy throwing a breaking ball and it's going to nip on its way down the lowest outside corner while its trajectory is heading downward, the ball may bounce before it gets to the catcher. At the very least, he's going to catch it right on the ground. Now, in the history of baseball, this has never been called a strike. You've never seen a catcher catch the ball almost on the dirt and get the call. They don't even frame it. They don't even try because they know that ball's down. Well, technically, depending on the spin, the axis, the rotation, and with all the sabermetrics, maybe it clips the front part of the zone before it's out. You know, by the time it's 3 inches across the plate, it's 2 inches low. But again, the moment it crosses the front edge, boom, it clips the zone and you get a strike for it. So you're going to see pitches called strikes that you've never seen called strikes in your life before. Whether you're 20 years old, 70 years old, if this K zone comes in, things like that are going to happen. I mean, think about Pedro Martinez's right-handed changeup against a left-handed hitter. The way that thing dove down and away from a lefty. If it crosses the front of the plate right at the lower outside portion of the zone and then continues to just dive, the ball's going to be on the ground. It's going to be nowhere near the strike zone based on the movement. But when it crosses that front part of the plate, it could be high enough to be called a strike. And then boom, it's down in the ground. There's going to be a lot of that. That is going to be the hardest pitch, the hardest conversation, the hardest everything for hitters to adapt to, because you watch the game, you see the catcher receive it. Even if he catches it where the glove isn't in the zone, it's typically not a strike. I mean, think about two-seam action, not front door coming back, but starting it away, moving outside, right-handed pitcher, left-handed hitter. It touches that front part of the plate right on the outside black. By the time the catcher catches it, it's 4 inches off the plate because it's got 6 inches of lateral run, and it clips that front portion of the fake square or zone. That's a strike, but a catcher catches it 4 inches outside. Well, how is that possible? Because across the plate, it hit it. And that's where the definition of the strike zone may have to be changed if we're going to robotic umpires, because people are going to see balls bouncing in the dirt or catchers catching it right off the ground, and it's going to say strike because, I mean, Clayton Kershaw's curveball moves how many feet? 3 feet? So imagine that ball as low as it could possibly be right at the front of the strike zone and how low it would be before it gets to the catcher. It's just insane to think those being called strikes and people not having, altercations because of it. So I like getting it right. The 97% thing ultimately being won an inning isn't good enough. It affects too many games as a fan, where sports gambling is becoming more and more accepted or legalized out there. It's definitely an issue and could be moving forward where 100% correct. We can't have human error costing a lot of people a lot of money across the United States. So let's go to the computer if we have the capability. And I saw it firsthand in the Atlantic League. It was the first league, if you research it out there, that utilized it, the Independent League. I went out with the York Barnstormers, I believe it was, behind the scenes, doing some, play-by-play, kind of shadowing, things like that, color commentary, and I was able to see the individual with the box in front of them on the computer and see where the ball would cross. She would get on the walkie-talkie quick, let somebody know what's going on. They would update the game cast. At this point, it wasn't live to which they were using it yet, but they were in the beta stage to essentially test how many discrepancies there would be early on. And I don't know if that number was high enough or they said, hey, let's do it. But, the Atlantic League, Independent League, I've seen it, and I've seen that pitch that I'm talking about called a strike, and the entire park just kind of be dumbfounded because the catcher had to block the ball, and it was a called third strike or some situation along those lines. So I can't go to the robotic umps unless we have some sort of tweak to ultimately what we decide is and is not a strike, because that particular instance I don't think is going to go over well at all with the baseball fans out there. But that'll wrap it up here for the first segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik. We're going to pause right now for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows. But when we come back, we're going to talk about news and notes across the league. There's a lot going on as we creep ever so closer to opening day. Stick around, everybody. We'll be right back.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back, and thanks for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik. This is episode number 206 of the Baseball Podcast, and welcome in, everybody. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. If this is your first episode, second, third, welcome to the family. I appreciate the new listeners. Hopefully you guys are enjoying these last couple of episodes here. If you haven't done so yet, scroll on down wherever you're listening to this episode. Give us a 5-star review. Click the star all the way on the right. Write a review if you'd like. I'd love to share them here on the episode. I usually do. Give you guys a shout out. If you say good things about me, what the heck? We might as well give you some airtime. So, haven't had one in a couple of weeks here. That'll be a bit of a goal for you guys over the weekend. One of you take some time. It really takes 10 seconds. You just got to throw in an ID, a description. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know some feedback. Hopefully you guys are enjoying everything we're doing out there. But head to social media as well. Check out both the GSMC Baseball Podcast as well as the GSMC Podcast Network. The podcast network itself is awesome. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, there's a podcast literally for everything, whether it's news, cars, movies, music, different sports, books, self-motivation, exercise, health and fitness. I don't care. Whatever you're into, literally name something. Insert blank. There's a podcast within the network. Somebody like myself giving you guys quality content. You're going to check that out. So type in GSMC into the search bar wherever you get your podcast. Follow all the different ones there. We very much appreciate it. And before we dive into segment number 2, I do want to give a shout out. The Baseball Podcast has added another body. We've added a gentleman by the name of Evan Worley, who will be starting here ever so soon for the baseball podcast. He's going to be helping out with social media as well on Twitter and Facebook, along with myself, bringing you guys episodes of the podcast here. So you get to hear my point of view. You'll get to hear from Evan. Looking at some of Evan's background, I'm sure you'll hear from him moving forward, but looks to be a Gopher at the University of Minnesota. So what's up, Evan, Minnesota? I got a buddy out there in Minneapolis. I was on Lake Minnetonka for July 4th a year or two ago. So, but welcome, Evan, man. Love to have you here. Looking forward to continuing to grow the podcast, continuing to bring you guys quality content. So be nice to Evan. Give him 5 stars as well when you guys listen. But let's jump into the second segment here, having ourselves a bit of fun. This one's just kind of news and notes, little tidbits and thoughts that are happening across the Major League Baseball landscape as of right now. The most recent news, or I guess the top headline, so to speak, is that of Yasiel Puig is signing with the Atlanta Braves. And honestly, this one makes a lot of sense based on the recent events to which we've seen and discussed here on the podcast. And that, what I'm talking about, is Nick Markakis opting out here recently. So the outfield depth in Atlanta got a little bit thinner with Markakis. I mean, you bring in Puig, and it looks like he's going to play right field every day. They got a gentleman by the name of Pache out there. If you guys want to get fancy, Pache down there in Atlanta. He got a little bit dinged up in an inner squad the other day, so they got even more thin, which leads Puig to play right field. It puts Acuna Jr. and Senna, Inciarte in left field, and then Ozuna as the designated hitter. So you're able to get Puig's bat in the lineup next to Acuna, Inciarte, and Ozuna. It leads to a pretty deep lineup there in Atlanta. And honestly, knowing a couple of diehard Braves fan, yes, being up here in the greater Philadelphia, so the Northeast, it's not the hometown guys, although I do have a couple of contacts down in Atlanta that I like to check in with from time to time, but the overall consensus on the Puig signing seems to be very positive in Atlanta. You know, you look at Puig last year going from Cincinnati to Cleveland. Didn't do that great in Cincinnati, was strong for Cleveland down the stretch, was actually traded, I think it was hours after he got involved with that brawl. Cincinnati and Pittsburgh going at it, Amir Garrett, Puig, and then he gets traded just a moment later. But the Braves fans are high on that. They like the energy, the swagger, the charisma that comes with signing the likes of Yasiel Puig. Yes, they understand they're not getting the 2013, 14, maybe even 15 version of Puig, which kind of lit the league on fire. A lot of highlight plays, showing off his arm, hitting long bombs. Well, he's not that guy anymore, but he's still a very competent major league hitter. He's average or above average at the plates. It was just last year where the power numbers really lacked for him. But if you look back to 2018, 2017, the power numbers were still there. So Atlanta is very much vying on the option that last year was just a down year for him when it comes to power, and he should, get back to the days of 17 and 18 and really bringing pop to the lineup that they may have missed with Markakis. So Braves fans are excited. As a Phillies fan, yes, Puig, he doesn't scare you, but he's certainly a good option. And in my opinion, Atlanta's a better baseball team today than they were yesterday with the addition of Yasiel Puig. And that's really what it comes down to. Does this player make us better? And for the money, does it really matter? And in baseball, the second part of that question, for the money, becomes really less relevant compared to football with the salary cap or hockey or anything along those lines. It's, hey, are we willing to pay this guy? They're not even near the luxury cap or the luxury tax, so they don't have to worry about any of that. So bring Puig in. They don't foresee any clubhouse issues. They think he fits in, and he brings some strong energy to the clubhouse down there in Atlanta. And I'll be curious to see how he does. Back in the National League once again. Obviously, his time with the Dodgers, then the Reds, now in Atlanta. There's some familiarity there, but being all East Coast, maybe his time with the Dodgers won't overlap as much, and it'll be kind of new faces for Yasiel here on the eastern side of the country. But jumping around here, Jacob deGrom underwent an MRI for the New York Mets. This is not good if you are a Mets fan for obvious reasons. Noah Syndergaard is already out for this year, but Jacob deGrom is a two-time Cy Young reigning champion, clearly a favorite to win his third arguably the best pitcher in baseball, most likely the best pitcher in baseball. I would put him absolutely at the top of the list. And those results came back here late on Wednesday, and they, quote, didn't show anything concerning, end quote. So basically it came back, no herniated discs, no ligaments, no tendons, no damage, just kind of muscle tightness, again, quote unquote, is what they're saying. And for somebody who's experienced back spasms as a baseball player, I can certainly understand how this is not something that you can play through or not something that you can pitch through. I mean, we saw Max Scherzer dealing with it in the World Series last year, missing a start late in the World Series due to back spasms. This isn't something where, I'll just gut it out, I can get through it. When you have spasms or tightness in the back, it affects everything. It affects literally walking. I've had similar situations, and the reports were with Scherzer. Again, I'm just referencing this because, heck, it was the most recent baseball we've had, and it's the same injury DeGrom seems to be going against currently. But you have spasms to the point where it locks everything up in your body, and you have to go down on all fours. You got to get on hands and knees to just kind of straighten everything out, lay down, kind of let it recenter, readjust. You pull your knees into your chest, laying on your back, and do those types of exercises, cross it out, kind of do the starfish style of stretch. But, if you have tightness, and DeGrom showed this with only throwing one inning on Tuesday, you don't want to gut through it, especially in spring training, especially when you're trying to ramp things up. This isn't something to push through, because if you push it and something is, more long-term affected from your back, as of right now the MRI says it's not, which was good news, it is still 1 to 2 weeks, for this injury to heal itself. And being 1 week or 8 days away when you're listening to this episode from opening day, I don't think you're getting Jacob deGrom opening day if you're a New York Mets fan. Honestly, I think they shut him down for a week. Then you get another start to ramp up. So I don't think you're going to see him until a week or two into the season. Specifically, again, if you're looking for him for the full 60, you're willing to skip a start on the early side of things to get the full rest of the season with DeGrom being DeGrom. So I think he misses opening day. I would be very surprised. Again, he just went one inning, so he'd be lined up to throw here in a couple of days. But if you're getting an MRI after a start where you go one inning, you're typically not getting run back out there 72 hours later to go on normal rest. So they're going to skip that one, go to the next round, potentially how that goes. I don't know. Maybe you skip that one. And then, like I said, you're staring at that first or second week, really getting back into the swing of things. So not good news out of Mets camp. Jacob deGrom going to miss opening day. That has not been reported anywhere else. That is just my personal opinion. But honestly, I think it's a pretty good bet if somebody's willing to take that out there. But in other Mets news, the New York Mets are actually up for bid. They are currently for sale. Multiple buyers are putting in their bids to buy the New York Mets, and one squad that has put together a ton of names that honestly I'm rooting for in this situation. It looks to be one of two potential options moving forward, but J-Lo, Jennifer Lopez, and Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod, are the two main bodies behind this second group of individuals, and mainly former athletes who are looking to purchase the New York Mets. It's been reported A-Rod and J-Lo have both put in upwards over $300 million of their own money into this investment, and they were still even short. So they got the likes of Brian Urlacher to join, the old Chicago Bears linebacker, Travis Kelce, the Chiefs' current tight end, who at this point may not have the buku bucks, but within the next 12 months or so is going to be very, very well compensated by the Kansas City Chiefs. As we've seen, they doled out for Patrick Mahomes and now Chris Jones. Travis Kelce is next in line coming up next offseason, so that'll help him with his bid to buy the Mets here, even if he's like, yo, put me in for a future because I'm about to get paid like a tight end and a wide receiver. So, to quote Dumb and Dumber, those are IOUs. Those are as good as cash. It's probably what Travis Kelce is throwing at him. But DeMarco Murray, oh man, there's DeMarco Murray. Just bald as a cowboy, signed by the Birds. Really not good here. So DeMarco, not a huge fan base in the city of Philadelphia. But I myself, as a professional, of course, stay very down the center. And DeMarco Murray is involved with the bid to buy the Mets. They also got Joe Thomas, potentially the best offensive lineman to ever play the sport. Certainly the best one to do it here in the past decade or two. Recently hung him up for the Cleveland Browns. He's doing a podcast now, making his bills, so he's involved. Bradley Beal with the Washington Wizards. He got paid, so he's got some cash to throw in there. And lastly, Mason Plumlee of the Plumlee brothers, or triplets, I think, even for the Plumlees. They're very much involved in commercial real estate and know what's going on. I actually know somebody who's friends with a Plumlee that's very involved with financial bids such as this. But at the end of the day, if you read the reports, this group of former athletes or current athletes is right around $1.7 billion. And there's another financial firm or investor who's looking to bid just about $2 billion to own the Mets. Now, from an ownership perspective, both of these parties, they're very well respected in the baseball community. Both are seen as viable options that will indeed try to win in the city of New York. They're not just looking at this as a financial gain or an investment. They will put money into the business. They will spend on free agency. They will try to compete with the likes of the New York Yankees in the bright lights of the Big Apple in New York. So, again, I don't have a stake in the game either way. I just think it'd be fascinating to say the Mets now owned by J-Lo, A-Rod, Urlacher, Kelsey, Murray, Thomas, Beal, Plumlee, and others. And I'm rooting for those guys. A lot of the old athletes who have positive aspirations with their money or who are not broke, as we've all seen. The ESPN documentary, I root for guys who are able to financially do very well for themselves in their career to continue that success after they hang them up. But lastly here, wrapping up the second segment, cardboard cutout prices. For those of you listening across the country here, slowly but surely teams are releasing the prices to put your pretty little face on a cardboard cutout wherever you want in the stadium. Some of them you can put them wherever. Some you pay a little more to get behind the dish as opposed to the outfield. But either way, you can get your pretty face on a cardboard cutout. If you're listening to this out in L.A. and you're a Dodgers fan, it's $149 or $299. So $150 or $300, depending on where you want to sit for all 30 home games in the cardboard feature. Let's see here. The San Francisco Giants, they're $99 for the home games, wherever you want to be out there. The New York Mets, they're $86. You see what they did there? The 86 Mets. We talked about how maybe they're the best team ever. Well, $86 gets a cardboard cutout of Joe Smith out there behind the dish at Citi Field. The Milwaukee Brewers, $50. The Texas Rangers, $50. They're on the low end. The Houston Astros are $100. Right on the dot there. So maybe I'll buy myself a pretty little mug, throw it behind the dish so my buddy Ryan Presley can stare at my face every time he comes in for a home game. That would certainly put a smile on his grill. God, he would hate me. So who's got $100? Let's donate. Listeners, let's get a GoFundMe, $100 to put my face, goofy face behind the disc for Houston so I could stare at my buddy throw all the time in the eighth inning. That'd be funny. The Oakland A's, $89 or $150, depending on where you want to sit for the games. And then the final three, very affordable. The Chicago White Sox at $50, the Kansas City Royals at $40, and the Mariners, the Seattle Mariners at $30 to get a cardboard cutout. So that's where we're at here in 2020. We're not going to have any fans in the stands, but you can put your face on a cardboard cutout and see yourself on television here for just under $100, depending on who you root for, or as much as $300 if you find yourself out in L.A. and want to sit in the first couple of rows for the home games. But that'll wrap it up here for the second segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik. We'll pause right now for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows. But when we come back, we're going to talk about an all-star lineup for each one of these divisions. If the all-stars for the East, Central, and West squared off against each other, ultimately, who would win that matchup? It's going to be an interesting conversation. I think you guys are going to want to hang around. We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kevin Mahalik. This is episode 206 of the Baseball Podcast. We've had a great show so far for you guys, talking about the umpires and how 11 of them have opted out thus far, and out of 76, 20 of them consider themselves high risk to be over the age of 55 and to be able to opt out, and concern over social distancing, travel, and safety for the umpires with the union and how they're going to be attacking 2020 moving forward. And then we touched on some news and notes. Yasiel Puig to the Braves. Jacob deGrom has an MRI that, quote, didn't show anything concerning, as well as how much you got to pay to put yourself in a cardboard feature in the stands at your favorite team's home games this year. So let's jump now into segment number 3 here moving forward. And with yesterday, the 14th, or 2 days ago, at the point where you're listening to this episode, it would have been the All-Star break for Major League Baseball. I mean, we would have been at the halfway point already. It's just fascinating from a mental perspective. Because there haven't been any sports, I haven't been able to fully comprehend that we're halfway through the month of July, because the month of April never started. There was never opening day. There was never playoffs in basketball, playoffs in hockey. The months of April, May, and June just never happened in the sports world, and they're happening now. And it's throwing me all out of whack here. But with the All-Star game being just a few days ago, I wanted to throw out All-Star squads. And I didn't want to do it, hey, this is who I would have thought have made it if it was a normal season. I said, okay, 2020's wacky enough. How do we use this for this segment? Well, let's come up with a West, Central, and East all-star kind of best of the best lineup and decide which unit would win, which one would have home field in the World Series, if that was still a thing. Oh, thank goodness it's not. But if it was, let's see here. So let's go East to West. Starting out, I'll kind of run through a starting rotation, a bullpen, a lineup, and then we'll kind of cross-reference and see who I think is ultimately going to win. And then I'll look for you guys in the comments this week to let me know who you would think wins these matchups. But the Eastern squad here, the starting rotation, it's really tough to go against any of these guys, and they're very deep. But Garrett Cole, Jacob deGrom, obviously at the top. Scherzer, he's a no-brainer. Blake Snell is a no-brainer. And then Steven Strasburg, your World Series MVP. So it's tough to argue with any of those 5 guys at the top of there. The hardest part would be picking ultimately who's going to win game 1. But you go into the bullpen, I utilize some starters as well based on the bullpen. You know, the likes of Aaron Nola, Patrick Corbin could be in the bullpen. But really on the back end, you're looking at Aroldis Chapman, Dylan Betances, Sean Doolittle, Ken Giles, Will Smith, Nick Anderson with the Rays, probably the last guy I would throw in there. So really, any part of the East, looking at it here, I would put the bullpen as the weakest unit, and yet you're going 6, 7, 8 of Giles, Doolittle, Betances, Chapman. I don't know how many blown saves or comeback wins you'd get as the opposing unit going against the likes of that squad down the stretch. But let's jump into the lineup here for these guys as we make our way through. Center field, I put Ronald Acuna Jr., third base here, that one was a little bit thin. I went with Rafael Devers of the Red Sox. Right field, Aaron Judge of the Yankees. First base, I took Freddie Freeman over Pete Alonso. I think you could put Alonso in there. I still like Freeman. Honestly, just a fan of him as a person as well as his game. Designated hitter again could be Alonso. I went J.D. Martinez, just kind of thinking from the American League side of things. I'll keep the DH right where they're at there. Left field, I went Juan Soto. I think he has a huge year this year. Behind the dish, of course, a bit of a homer here. JT Realmuto. Could have been Gary Sanchez. I have him coming off the bench. Shortstop, Xander Bogaerts. I put him just in front of Gleyber Torres from the Yankees. At second base, DJ LeMahieu. Once again, you could have went with Ozzie Albies. You got Harper in the outfield maybe as a shot. Giancarlo Stanton out in the outfield coming off the bench there. So plenty of names to choose from. I mean, in right field, I went Judge over Harper. That's hard to argue. So it's tough choices that could have went either way. But ultimately, I think that's a loaded, stacked lineup, as well as the rotation offensively for the East. Just, man, that's going to be tough to beat. But let's continue around, and then we'll kind of look at it here, maybe stack rank them 1 through 3. Let's go to the Central now, working our way east to west. In the rotation, I got Trevor Bauer of the Reds, Shane Bieber, Luis Castillo of the Reds as well. I love Luis. Some people are still sleeping on the Reds rotation out there. I'm not one of them. I've been on them for a minute. You guys who have been following along for 20, 30 episodes now, you guys know I'm on the Cincinnati and the White Sox train. I don't know if this short season screws that up, but I would have been if they were playing 162. I also got Jack Flaherty for the Cardinals and Lucas Giolito in the rotation there. Some solid names up top. In the bullpen, again, some starter overload. Jose Barrios, Mike Clevinger, Gallegos for the Cardinals. Now we're talking back end here. Hader, Hand, Iglesias, Kimbrel, Rogers. Really good options in the bullpen here. I do think the bullpen is solid. I mean, Kimbrel, he could be a mess. Some people know he's struggled at times after sitting out. Taylor Rogers from the left side has continued to develop. Hader's lights out. He's locked in. So I like the East bullpen just a bit better, and I do feel I like the East rotation a bit stronger than the Central as well here. Let's go to the lineup offensively. Let's see here some of the conversations we had. Francisco Lindor at shortstop. That was a no-brainer there. Javier Baez at second base. Tough to argue. Christian Yelich out in right field, of course. Paul Goldschmidt at first base for the Cardinals. Out in left field, I put Chris Bryant out there because I threw Josh Donaldson at third base, the recent addition for the Twins. So I moved Chris Bryant because I wanted to keep his bat in the lineup here. Nelson Cruz as the designated hitter, tough to argue against. Yadier Molina over Salvador Perez. You could have put Joey Votto at first base instead of Paul Goldschmidt. But Lorenzo Cain out in center, potentially Nick Castellanos for the Reds. It's okay. I mean, the top three there, Lindor, Baez, Yelich, oh man. But as you start to get down to the bottom of the list, Bryant, Cruz, Donaldson, Molina, Cain, I think I may take the East there too. It's just kind of fascinating. The bottom end of Soto, Sanchez, Bogaerts, and LeMahieu. Maybe not. I don't know. It's worthy of a discussion definitely here moving forward. But the Central is no slouch. I mean, you're looking at that. Joey Votto on the bench, Salvador Perez, Josh Bell at first base potentially for the Pirates. Oh, there's a lot you can do with that Central conversation. But jumping around now out west, let's see here. Looking at the rotation, there are a couple of different ways you could go here, but I went with Clayton Kershaw, Madison Bumgarner, Corey Kluber for the Rangers. I loved Kluber for his time in Cleveland. I think he bounces back for a strong 2020. And then I filled in the final spots. Justin Verlander, obviously Cy Young winner. And then Walker Buehler was my fifth. I put Walker Buehler in front of the likes of Zach Greinke, a former Cy Young winner. So shows you how much I think of Walker Buehler's future potentially out west. So you look at the bullpen, you got your starters, the two guys, Greinke and Paddock, Chris Paddock for the Padres, and then the back end of Ozuna, Yates, Jansen, Hendricks, and Robles out in L.A. So the rotation itself here, doing some math, over 40 years of experience, 7 Cy Youngs, 2 MVPs in the rotation, which you typically don't see from the pitching staff, so to have 2 of them is pretty wild, and a World Series MVP. So that's even without Walker Buehler, who's got like 1 year of big league experience and no awards. So the other 4 guys are putting together 40-plus, 7 Cy Youngs. That's tough to go against. And the bullpen side of things, it's young a little bit, but I love Ozuna. I love Yates out in the bullpen. Hendricks is solid. Jansen slowing down a little bit, but still very, very effective at his age from his role there in the bullpen. Let's see. Let's look at the lineup here out west. We got George Springer, left field, Mike Trout out in center field, Cody Bellinger at first base. I don't think we're going to get any arguments there so far. Right field, Mookie Betts, once again. That's fine. At DH, Shohei Ohtani. Honestly, you could put Yordan Alvarez in there, potentially based on his half a season last year. Ohtani's upside coming over from Japan, maybe a bit more of a track record to go off of, but you're not going to go wrong with Yordan Alvarez or Shohei Ohtani at the DH spot. At third base, I'm going Nolan Arenado. I'm putting Manny Machado on the bench. He's coming off Matt Chapman on the bench as well at third base. Alex Bregman could be at third base on the bench, but I'm going to move him over to the shortstop position because why the heck not? I just got to get him on the field. I think he could play there if he has to. He has for Houston at times in the past, so it certainly wouldn't be forbidden territory for Bregman there or, foreign territory. At second baseman, Jose Altuve, and then the catching position, Chirinos for the Rangers, maybe Kelly for the D-backs. I don't know. That was the one weak spot, honestly, was behind the dish. We had an overloaded third base like we talked about. Trevor Story is the only other shortstop I thought about using if we're not ultimately going to move over, let's see, if we're not moving Alex Bregman to shortstop. But those are the squads. So ultimately, how do they stack up? Once again, rotation-wise, you're looking at the West and the East being the top two. The West has more of the track record in the past. Kershaw maybe on the back nine, Verlander on the back nine, Bumgarner arguably on the back nine, Kluber on the back nine. So guys really have more of a front-loaded track record there compared to the guys in the East that seem to be right in the prime of their career. I mean, Scherzer's on the back nine, but Strasburg just got paid. Snell's up and coming. DeGrom, Cole, all those guys just got compensated. And then even in the Central, I mean, the likes of Bauer, he's on the back end. Bieber, Castillo, Flaherty, and Giolito are the young bucks, but I like the East horses over the West horses there. So I'm going to go East, West, Central in rotation standings. Now looking at the bullpen here, running through them kind of ever again so quickly in the East. You got Chapman, Doolittle, Giles, Smith, Betances on the back end. In the Central, you had, let's see here, Rogers, Kimbrel, Hand, Hader, Gallegos. And then out West, you had Yates, Robles, Osuna, Hendricks, Jansen. Again, man, I like the Eastern Division. I mean, Aroldis Chapman, maybe the best closer in the sport right now. Betances was lights out with the Yankees coming off the injury. Doolittle is certainly an above-average reliever for the Nationals. Ken Giles, when he's locked in, is locked in. Will Smith. Yeah, I'm going East. And then between the Central and the West, looking at Jansen, Ozuna, Yates, or Hand, Iglesias, Kimbrel. I'll go Central. I like Josh Hader. I think he's a difference maker. Brad Hand is very solid if Kimbrel is a plus guy. And then Taylor Rogers, I think, is very undervalued as a left-handed guy out of the bullpen. So we'll go East, Central, West in the bullpen, and then that'll bring it down to the lineup, which you could argue either way. Acuna, Judge, Freeman, Soto, Martinez, Sanchez in the East. Let's see here, going to the Central ever so quickly again. Lindor, Baez, Yelich, Cruz, Donaldson, Bryant, Molina, Kane. A little bit more depth in the Central there than the East, but I like the East top-end talent. But then you go out West, and the West lineup is honestly the best one in my opinion. Springer, Trout, Bellinger, Betts, Ohtani, Arenado, Bregman, Altuve. I mean, come on, 1 through 8, that's insane. And then you got the 9-hole Kelly or Chirinos, but still, 1 through 8 out West. You can't even argue with that. So the lineup would be best out West. The rotation is best out East. The bullpen scattered in the middle. I ultimately think it would come down to the West versus the East, and then it would really be decided by starting pitching. I think the East starting pitching is ever so slightly better than the West, but I do think the West lineup is better than the East. So it would be a matter of if Springer, Trout, Bellinger, Betts, and them can get to the likes of DeGrom, Cole, Scherzer, Snell, and Strasburg. And honestly, when it comes to October baseball, it comes to playoff baseball, good pitching beats good hitting. And I just think Cole, DeGrom, Scherzer, Snell, Strasburg, back to back to back to back would be too much for even the likes of Trout, Bellinger, Betts, Arenado, Bregman, and Altuve to constantly score off of. But man, that would be fascinating. Let's do that after the year. I know they talked about having an all-star game after the year. Well, let's do 3 teams. Let's do a round robin. Everybody play each other, and then the winners play a best of 3. It'll be, no fans. We'll have some fun, more games. I mean, what the heck? Why not? We're talking about doing a home run derby or something afterwards to make some revenue, so you might as well throw an all-star round robin style of tournament out there. But who do you guys think would be in there? Who would you change? Would you change any of the rotations, the bullpens, the lineups? Let me know. Hit us up on social media. Reach out to the GSMC Baseball Podcast. Leave me a review here on the Apple Podcast or wherever you're listening to this, and let me know what you think of the squads. But I think the East would ultimately take down the West after the Central ends up being in third place there. But that'll wrap things up here for the third segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We're going to pause right now for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows. But when we come back, we're going to talk about every team's opening day starter. Not everybody's announced it yet. We'll take some guesses. But for those that have, we'll discuss those, as well as kind of just wrap things up and give some more thoughts on ultimately a 60-game season, and if this is really a good or bad thing for Major League Baseball in the big picture. So stick around, everybody. I am Kevin Mahalik with the GSMC Baseball Podcast. We'll be right back.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Welcome back, and thanks for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. This is episode 206 of the Baseball Podcast. I appreciate everybody taking your time out of the busy day today to give this podcast a listen. But if you could do me a favor, I tend to ask you guys once every episode, if you could share this podcast with one of your friends, whether it's your son, daughter, uncle, dad, friend, nephew, cousin, frat brother, sorority sister, teammate, classmate, whoever it is, hit those 3 little buttons, 3 little dots. If you're on Apple Podcasts listening to this, click share, click messages, shoot it out saying, hey, this is a great baseball podcast. Opening day is just over a week away. You're going to want to check this out because Kev is going to come at it with the takes once the season starts. No, it's not going to be anything crazy, but we're going to continue to have fun like we've done on today's episode, like we've done on episodes in the past. And once actual baseball is being played, just imagine all the stuff we can actually talk about. We can talk about in-game decisions, pitch selection, slumps. Oh, man, it's going to be a ton of fun. So share the podcast now so you can get ahead of it. And if you haven't already, subscribe, like, rate, review, all of that stuff, social media, podcast, you guys get it out there. I'm not going to bore you with that request one more time here. But for the fourth segment, I wanted to dive into opening day starters. Starting opening day, there's a bit of a pedigree or a bit of an aura that comes with the title of opening day starter. Sometimes it's some individuals who you would never think, and other times it's the same guy year after year after year. So let's dive into everything we know so far, all the different teams. Some have announced it, some have not. We'll kind of take a guess on what's going on. But starting off with the teams who have announced who's going to start opening day, you got the LA Angels. They're going to start Andrew Heaney. It'll be his first opening day start in his career. Andrew, a left-handed pitcher, 29 years old. Nickname's the Heen Dog. Oh, Heen Dog getting his first opening day start for LA. Good for you, man. Shout out to you. No pressure, though, of course. Last year they went with Trevor Cahill, so not a repeat out there for L.A. The Texas Rangers, they're going with Lance Lynn this year. Last year's starter was Mike Minor. The Rangers haven't had the same starting pitcher opening day in consecutive years since Kevin Millwood did it from 06 to 09. So over a decade now since the Rangers have gone back-to-back years with a number one on the bump. So it just goes to show the trouble that you guys have had down there in Arlington trying to find that horse since Kevin Millwood left in 09. The LA Dodgers, they're running out Clayton Kershaw. It'll be his 9th. Last year was actually Hyun-Jin Ryu. So Kershaw began last year on the injured list. So it snapped his streak of 8 straight opening day starts. But he runs back out there for his 9th. So nothing new for Clayton out there in LA. In Cincinnati, it's going to be Sonny Gray. It'll be his 3rd opening day start. Last year it was Luis Castillo. Gray led the team in ERA last year, makes his 3rd opening day start, like we said. He did it for the Oakland A's in 2014 and 2015. So the first opening day start for Sonny Gray 5 years later. That's a nice accomplishment for somebody like Sonny. The Seattle Mariners are going with Marco Gonzalez. It'll be his 2nd straight opening day start for the Mariners. He signed an extension with the club in February, led the staff in innings and strikeouts last year, so he seemed to be the easy choice to start opening day for Seattle. The Nationals, they're going with Max Scherzer. It's his 5th. He started opening day last year. He confirmed that. It'll be his 3rd straight season and 5th time in 6 years. We'll see Max Scherzer on the bump for opening day. The Baltimore Orioles, John Means. It'll be his first start. He had a strong campaign last year, finishing 2nd in AL Rookie of the Year, making the All-Star team. He'll be the Orioles' 4th different opening starter in the last 4 years, and they haven't had somebody go back-to-back since 14 and 16. So more recent than the Rangers, but still quite a bit of time to not have a back-to-back opening day starter. Let's see here. The Kansas City Royals, Danny Duffy. It'll be his 3rd opening day starts, all of which have been with Kansas City. He spent his entire career there, but in and out of the opening day slot for Mr. Duffy. So his 3rd in his career for Kansas City. The Atlanta Braves, let's see, they have tabbed Mike Soroka. It'll be his 1st. 22 years old, just under 23, 1 day short of 23 years old. He'll be the youngest opening day starter in the modern era for the Braves. That the modern era consists of everything 1900 till now. So a long time for somebody under the age of 23 to start opening day for Atlanta. The San Francisco Giants, Johnny Cueto. Wow, Johnny Cueto is going to get his 5th opening day start. He missed most of last year, returning from Tommy John. Of course, out in San Fran, he had previously made 4 straight opening day starts. He had done so for the Reds from 2012 to 2015, and now he's back 5 years later, opening day for the San Francisco Giants. So shout out to Johnny Cueto, working back from Tommy John, getting back on the bump and finding yourself out there opening day. That's a pretty nice accomplishment for, Sonny Gray and now Johnny Cueto as well. The Miami Marlins, they'll start Sandy Altacanara. He was the Marlins' lone all-star last year, 3.88 ERA. Jose Urena started the last 2 years, but Sandy gets the ball this year for Miami against the Fightin' Phils in Philadelphia. The Cardinals, Jack Flaherty, at 24 years old, he'll be the youngest Cardinals pitcher to start since 1989. He'll be the youngest opening day starter in just over 30 years for the Cardinals. So Jack Flaherty getting his first, getting the monkey off his back. That'll be the first of many, in my opinion, for Flaherty in St. Louis. The New York Yankees, they're going to go with Garrett Cole, of course. Last year's starter was Tanaka, but Cole's deal, the largest ever for a pitcher, and now he'll start against Max Scherzer opening night on the 23rd here. So no Yankees pitcher has ever struck out 10 batters on opening day. Wow, Cole hasn't struck out fewer than 10 in a regular season game since August of last year. So Cole typically strikes out more than 10. The Yankees haven't had it done opening day in a long time. That'll be a nice little subplot for you guys to follow along on the 23rd, a week from today when you're listening to this here on Thursday. The Houston Astros, they're running out Justin Verlander. It's his 12th. He started last year, too. He would have missed this year had it started on time due to Latin groin injuries. But now with the delay and the hiatus, he is now recovered and should be good to go for opening day. So The reigning AL Cy Young winner, his 12th opening day start is a tie for 8th most in history. He's alongside Burt Blevin now. And let's see, Grover Cleveland Alexander. Jeez, okay, there's a name. He's from back in the day. Well, Justin did it here, matching his 12th opening day start. So shout out Justin, man. That's pretty cool. Previously announced here, let's see. So we know Shane Bieber will start for the Cleveland Indians. It'll be his first. Let's see. He was the Tribe's 5th starter last year. Well, now he's the ace coming in after a 4th place finish in the AL Cy Young voting. Let's see. He replaces Corey Kluber, who started opening day last year out in Kansas City, or out in Cleveland. Excuse me. The Minnesota Twins, Jose Barrios. It'll be his 2nd opening day start. He started last year for them opening day as well. His 2nd straight season. In the 2019 opener, he went 7 scoreless with 10 Ks, so he'll be looking to repeat that performance from last year. No opening day jitters for Jose. You would think more of the same here for his 2nd go-around as well. These next teams here haven't released anything yet, but it's very likely who we know it's going to be, and that's the Toronto Blue Jays, Hyun-Jin Ryu. He was the biggest off-season free agent signing. I mean, you give a guy $80 million, you probably think he's going to start opening day, as well as they lost Marcus Stroman, who did it last year in Toronto, so Ryu seems to be a safe bet. For the Brewers, Brandon Woodruff transformed pretty much into their ace last year, puts him in prime position to start this year. They went, it wasn't him last year, it was Chachin last year for them in Milwaukee, but now Woodruff seems to be a safe bet, but hasn't been confirmed yet. For the D-backs, let's see, was Zach Greinke. He's now on the Astros. They gave Madison Bumgarner $85 million this offseason, which probably makes him the leader in the clubhouse to start opening day for Arizona. You would think you spend that kind of money on a starter, you would run him out there as much as possible. So I'll pencil him in to start for the Diamondbacks opening day. The New York Mets, man, this just got a heck of a lot murkier. Marcus Stroman now, I mean, Jacob deGrom was the easy answer there until this recent back fatigue, and now I just told you guys a couple of segments ago, I think he's going to miss opening day, so I'm going to go with Marcus Stroman for the Mets there because deGrom won't be healthy enough to get out there. The Padres, Chris Paddock, I think he's entering camp as the likely candidate to be the ace there. The innings limit in years past, those will finally be lifted, so he'll be good to go. He should be trained and ready to be going from the jump. The Philadelphia Phillies, Aaron Nola, he started opening day each of the last 2 years. He missed the first couple of days of camp due to exposure to somebody with the coronavirus, not a positive test, so all things point to him continuing to be on pace here. And then the Pittsburgh Pirates, Joe Musgrove. I mean, he threw the most innings last year and had the lowest ERA. You could go Chris Archer, but, he went surgery not too long ago, so I think Musgrove's probably the way to go. For the Red Sox here, they got a couple of injuries. Maybe Nathan Eovaldi, Sale's out. Rodriguez's status is in doubt with a positive test, so Eovaldi potentially instead of Rodriguez, who it was going to be. The Detroit Tigers, we got Matthew Boyd. He led the team in starts. He's a trade candidate. I think he gets the start for the Tigers. The White Sox, Lucas Giolito. I mean, come on, this guy has been, continuing to improve and be one of the top names in baseball now. So I think he's a no-brainer for the White Sox. And then some teams where I don't know, I'm not so sure. The bottom 5 here. The Athletics, I mean, Michael Fyers started opening day last year and led the team in innings, so I think you put him penciled in again opening day, but for some reason my gut's telling me it's not going to be Fyers. The Cubbies, you got David Ross. He's trying to decide between Yu Darvish and Kyle Hendricks. Either way, John Lester's streak ends. Going Yu Darvish in Chicago, honestly. I know it's not going to be Lester. I'll go Darvish over Hendricks. I think Ross runs him out there. The Tampa Bay Rays, Blake Snell won the 2018 Cy Young and opened up last year, but Charlie Morton was much better, previously. So I think they'll just run Snell out once again because he's been comfortable and he's done it in the past. And then lastly, the Colorado Rockies, I'll go with John Gray. Once considered a high-quality prospect, a future ace. But he finally gets his opening day start and can live up to that reputation. So that's all 30 opening day starters. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I'm looking forward to watching all those guys throw. Talking about the matchups once again a week from today 8 days, from today if you're listening for everybody else. But just the last couple of minutes here, I want to wrap up today's show. I saw some questions being floated around online, and the main one is a 60-game season good or bad for the game of baseball? And, of course, the answer is a bit of both. I mean, on the bad side, you have a season potentially full of asterisks. I mean, maybe somebody hits 400. Maybe somebody has a 0 ERA. Maybe something like that, happens, an on-base percentage record. I don't know. And, of course, everybody will say it was 60 games. It doesn't count. Ted Williams was still the last guy to hit 400. So there's that side of things. There's also the timing aspect of things as well here. I mean, the NBA bubble and the NHL playoffs are both going to be directly overlapping with the majority of the regular season for baseball. So are they really going to get more eyeballs on the sport due to the delay? For 1 week, yeah, they'll be the only sport in town. But after that, you get into the NBA, maybe during the regular season. I don't know, but I'm interested in the NBA. So it's going to be tough competing with hoops, competing with hockey, getting eyeballs, especially if there's blackouts, concerns like that. It could be an uphill battle for baseball on that side of things. And then potentially you could have players getting sick or more players opting out. And that's also a negative involved. No Buster Posey playing this year. No Nick Markakis. No Ian Desmond. A lot of quality names not going to be playing ball this summer, which is obviously a negative. But then on the good side, you have increased stakes and increased excitement on every game. Every game matters. 1 day equals 3 days. So if you go on a 4-game winning streak, that's like going on a 12-game win streak over the course of 162. So if you get hot, go and win 6 in a row, you may have already ticked your, printed your ticket to the playoffs there. So that'll be fascinating to see. Every game will matter. Maybe that's why more people will be drawn and want to watch baseball. As well as it gives us baseball something to cheer about. It gives you something to watch, kind of the summer soundtrack will be back. And overall, just baseball is back. I mean, that's the third good one here. And at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about. I mean, yes, this past month, it's really been hard to talk to you guys twice a week and get into the business side of baseball every day. And I'm fascinated by it. I love the business side of the sport. I love business side of sports in general. But I know a lot of you casual fans or a lot of you diehard fans out there even may not give a crap about the dollars, the cents. You just want to see the games. You want to see the action. You want to see the storylines. You want to see the pageantry, the theatrical just kind of expression that baseball puts with the walk-off home run, the excitement. It's a form of entertainment, and at the end of the day, we're getting that back. So truly having baseball back is a good thing. Of course, there's some negatives to what's going on, but ultimately, having baseball, crowning a champion, I think is the best thing that this sport could certainly have done moving forward. But that wraps up another episode here of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome once again, Evan, to the family. We'll hear from him soon enough. He'll be active on social media. You guys be nice to him out there as he joins the program, giving you guys even more great content to consume baseball-wise. So shout out, Evan. Welcome. We appreciate it. Shout out to you guys listening out there. Hopefully you enjoy your weekend, as I'll talk to you guys on Monday with the next episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Be safe, everybody out there. We'll talk to you soon.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.